Hi, I'm Jeff Van Gundy, and you're listening to Thunderbus.
Welcome to Thunderbus with your hosts, Watson and Bones.
I'm Watson.
And I'm Bones.
We get serious about the Thunder on this podcast.
But we don't get too serious.
Bones, joining us on the bus today is Kentucky Wildcats assistant coach Joel Justus. Joel played at UNC Wilmington and has been an assistant under John Calipari for 3 years, during which time he was the lead recruiter for the Thunder's own Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And he developed a close relationship with both SGA and Hamidou Diallo. Joel, welcome to the bus.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Hope you guys are doing well.
Hey, you too, Joel. Hey, Joel, can you explain to our listeners what you do in your role as an assistant coach at Kentucky?
Oh, man, let's see. You see, this is a one-day podcast, so I don't know if I got enough time to kind of get it in there, but it's a little bit of everything. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of everything. I mean, we recruit. Cal's the best in terms of allowing the people that kind of work for him, under him, to just work, and kind of we do recruiting. We do on the floor player development, do film stuff with guys. We have a luxury here of bringing in great guys that are driven, so we don't have tons of kind of babysitting to do off the floor, whether it's academic stuff or anything in the community, but just your basic basketball kind of responsibilities. Cal runs very much an NBA prep program, and that's for us, it's a great place to work.
Now, a few weeks ago, it was reported that you were being considered a candidate for the head coaching job at your alma mater. Obviously, that did not happen, but is being a head coach one day, is that a goal of yours?
Well, I think when you're a coach, in any kind of sport, I think that, the journey is what is the most important. And my journey has kind of led me a couple different places. I started out as an assistant coach at Elon, which is when I was there, was in the Southern Conference, has now since moved to the Colonial. Really from a conversation that I had with Cal, he encouraged me to go and take a high school job, so I left Elon and went to go be a head high school coach, ended up doing that for 6 years, and then rejoined Cal in the 2014-15 season, and was off the floor and more of a film kind of analytics role for a couple years, and then just finished my fourth season kind of on the floor recruiting. So I think that being a head coach is something that is definitely intriguing, but at this time, it's going to have to be a great fit because I love my job here. I love working for Cal. I love the University of Kentucky. I love the city of Lexington. And, it's going to take something really special for me to, want to leave here and go and branch out just because, it's fun here. And it's really a great place to go to work every day when you work with great kind of coaches as well as great people.
Coach, what is your relationship like with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Do you guys still talk today?
Yeah, we'll talk, here and there. Usually if he has a good game, I usually hit him up. I mean, early on in the year, I probably watched him play a little bit more, just with the league pass, and his games or the Thunder games would kind of be on a little bit before our season really got rolling. But we talk, we'll talk weekly. Just checking in. I mean, he'll ask how my son's doing or how the team's doing. He was one of the first guys to hit me when Emmanuel Quickly won Player of the Year, this year. And Shai's a guy who's deeply invested in Kentucky and Kentucky basketball, and I think still is a big fan.
So you watched film with SGA almost every day when he was at Kentucky. Is that something that you suggested, or did he initiate that? What can you tell us about that?
No, I mean, Shai was just the ultimate professional. when he got here. He's a guy that, I tell people, tell recruits, I tell families, and tell you guys today and any of the Thunder fans that are listening, Shai got more out of Kentucky than we did out of him. Yeah, I mean, he was a guy that was one to watch film. He was a guy that was getting extra workouts in. He was a guy that was getting extra conditioning, extra weight strength, workouts. But he was a guy that really was self-motivated. There was obviously days where, there would be certain suggestions of things to do, but he was a guy that, came here, wanted to start the race at the same place as everybody else and knew he had the opportunity to go and chase his dreams here. And if he worked, good things would happen. And I think from the moment he stepped on campus, like I said, he was professional, and I think he used this season, his one season at Kentucky, and treated it like his rookie season as a professional. And I think that's why he's had such a great transition into the association there as, a guy who, once again, is a consummate professional. Whenever he wakes up, he knows he has a job to do.
Coach, what does a film session look like? Are you scouting an opponent or looking at specific actions?
I think it was different. Every time, Shai was a guy that would oftentimes come and sit on the plane. We travel the same way, NBA teams do. Game's over, you shower, you change clothes, you get on the plane, grab a bite to eat, and then we head home. Shai would be a guy that would come up, grab my iPad, and kind of watch the game. Our flights are about an hour long. Everywhere, maybe a little bit longer with some of our SEC opponents, but he would always want to watch the game then. Usually the next day, if there was anything to take a look at, we would kind of clip a couple things out or go and review, his play. Then as you get closer into the next game, there might be some film that, we'd watch on an opponent, and there'd be some film that we'd watch from a previous game if you were playing that team for a second time. It would just go, obviously in different rhythms of the week or rhythms of the year.
So something that sets SGA apart is his incredible footwork. How hard did he work on that in college, and what makes his footwork so good?
I think that the biggest thing when Shai came here, he had a great baseline, when he came here. And that helped, obviously. It helped with his transition into Kentucky, but also I think he had a great work ethic once he got here, to polish up some of the things that he had learned before he was here. He had tremendous finishing touch around the rim, had great touch on floaters, had great touch on layups. A lot of the stuff that we worked on here was some of his mid-range, some of his stuff off the bounce, his acceleration to get by the defender and then a hard stop, or get by the defender and a big stride stop, or a void, or, just to where he had such great kind of instincts around the rim. You wanted to work on his pace to get to different spots on the floor. And that's something obviously that Shai worked on by himself, but it's also something that he was, blessed with naturally as well. But he's always a guy who, had a curious mind, is something that I always thought, and Coach Calipari always thought about Shai was unique for a young man that age, as he was always wanting to learn. He was always very coachable. He always was open to learning something new and asking questions and just wanting to figure out a way to get to be his best version on that day. And then the next day, okay, how can I get better?
That finishing ability that you discussed, and all those moves and the timing of it, it's such a key attribute for him. I think maybe his best attribute, especially because he's a good athlete, but he doesn't have the elite explosiveness of a Derrick Rose or a Russell Westbrook, someone like that. And with all those shot blockers in the NBA, he's somehow able to get off these beautiful finishes around them. It's kind of magic.
Well, he has great play. He has great pace, but he also uses kind of three things really well. He uses his fakes with his eyes. He's able to play with his eyes up. He's able to play to where he can deceive a shot blocker or a secondary defender with his eyes. He also is great with the ball. The ball moves a lot. The ball doesn't just stay kind of in one area of his body. He's able to play with the ball away from his body or above his shoulders or below his knees. He's also a great guy that plays with his shoulders. You know, he can get his shoulders by guys. He can use his length. He can use his size to score. And I think that when you have all three of those, you're able to use your eyes, your shoulders, you know, and then the ball. You can really kind of do some great things around the rim.
Coach, I like that you mentioned his eyes. When we watch him on TV every game, we think, how in the world is he able to just so easily and smoothly step past his opponent? And we kind of talk about, well, he must be doing something with his eyes that we aren't seeing, which is fooling the opponent to where he can actually, you know, body them and get by them. So I like that you mentioned that. Speaking of SGA's strengths, what ways have you seen how he has elevated his game since coming into the NBA?
Well, I think, you know, he's a guy that has had to continue to work on his outside shot. I think he's had to, you know, become a much more consistent shooter, you know, off the catch. And it's just everything, you know, when you step up a league, when you step up a level, you know, you're going to have to be ready to guard. You know, oftentimes, you know, one of the best players on the other team, you know, with the way the league is now in the backcourt, the talent that, you know, these teams have in their backcourt. But that never is an issue for Shai, because they got to go down and guard him on the other end too. And I think he's a guy that's learned how to play angles. He's learned how to play with a better pace, and always is in control. He's never playing out of control, and he's oftentimes the guy that, you know, is controlling the other guy both on offense and on defense.
You said you have a continuing relationship where you guys talk every week. What has he told you about his relationship with Chris Paul?
You know, we talk a little bit about it, but not much. I mean, he loves Chris. You know, Chris is. I remember talking to Chris last year at the Peach Jam when the whole thing went down, and Chris and I actually have a relationship. We grew up together in Winston-Salem, and I actually coached for Chris's AAU team before I was at Kentucky. So we know each other, know CJ, obviously Chris's older brother, and know the family. And, you know, Chris was excited, you know, that Shai was going to be there with them. And I know that those two get along because they both work. You know, they're both guys that respect hard work, that want to work hard, that want to win. And Shai has said nothing but just incredible things about Chris and their time off the floor as well as on the floor.
Us Thunder fans, you know, with Chris Paul being on the Rockets last couple of years, we have kind of a rivalry with the Rockets. The fan base was not totally receptive to the idea of Chris Paul joining the team, but he won us all over very quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. You know, he can do that. He can do that.
Yeah.
So last year, Shai nearly doubled his scoring while maintaining the same efficiency. Did you think he had a jump like that in him? And how long do you think it is until he makes the All-Star game?
I mean, I think that Shai's the guy who's going to continue to get better. I mean, you know, every year, I mean, he's, once again, the same stuff that we talked about. I mean, his DNA is to improve daily. I mean, he's a guy that wants to figure out, okay, how do I continue to polish up the things that I do well, but also address the shortcomings or address the areas that need improvement. I think he's a fantastic self-evaluator in terms of, like I said, being realistic about what he does well and the things that he needs to improve upon. So I think any type of improvement is not something that would be a big surprise and shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, because like I said earlier, I mean, he wants to be coached. He wants to work. He's going to seek out instruction. He's going to seek out a place to go and work with a veteran like Chris Paul or a certain group of guys that are going to challenge him off the bounce, or a certain group of guys that are going to help him with his catch and shoot. He's going to be a guy that improves as long as he's, you know, in that league, and as long as he is, I think, aspiring to be the best. And I think, you know, so much of what that league now bases its all-star game off of is out of his control. And I think Shai's always just been a guy that has controlled what he can control, and that's his work ethic, that's his attitude, and that's how he treats his teammates. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's definitely an all-star level player. now, and until the NBA changes how they select their all-stars, it's going to be tough, in the West with so many of the fan favorites and kind of guys that are, being chosen by fans as opposed to, by people that really understand who the best players are and who deserves to be in that game.
Coach, you also worked with our guy Hamidou. Besides his phenomenal athleticism, what are some of Diallo's strengths?
I always respected Hami's, kind of approach to basketball. I think he's a very thoughtful person, thoughtful young man on the floor, off the floor. He's a guy that is, once again, always kind of dialed in to what's going on, in a film session or in a pre-practice workout or a post-practice workout or an out-of-season kind of session. And he always wanted to be special. And I think he is doing that. He's had a little bit of some injuries, I know, and set him back a little bit. But I think he's got, so much great basketball ahead of him. And, he's a fantastic person, a beautiful individual with a great personality and a big heart. And have no doubt in my mind he's got big things ahead of him.
So Hami's three ball hasn't fallen yet in the NBA, but he shot 34% while he was at Kentucky. How long until you think his jumper rounds into form for the Thunder?
Well, without really studying it, why where his shots are coming from, or why he's missing. I think he's a guy that's going to work. And that's the thing about Hami is he's going to figure out what he needs to do to improve. He's going to be a guy that I guarantee is putting in some time right now wherever he is. He's putting in some work, and I would not be surprised that when this thing stops and we're able to get back out on the floor. I think that he'll be a guy that will be improved, and he'll come back, and that scouting report that's been out there is not going to be valid anymore.
One thing that we noticed from Hami this year that he didn't do during his rookie season is he played the roll man in several pick and roll actions, especially with Chris Paul, and he rolled like just textbook, opened up beautifully, always got open, and then he slammed that hog on a lot of dunks out of the pick and roll. Is that something that he did at Kentucky, or is that new since he left?
Well, I think, here, Hami was a guy that could be moved all over the floor, and his versatility, is something that I think will allow him to be in that league for many, many, many years. You look at a guy like Vince Carter that has played so many years in the NBA based on taking care of his body and having a great skill set, but also just being a supreme athlete. And I could see Hami, getting with a great organization like the Thunder, continuing to improve, working on that jump shot, but also just taking care of his body. There's not a lot of guys that are as athletic as Hami that play basketball, all over the world. And he's, like I said, he's a great person. He's a great teammate. And I think he's got a place in that league and in that franchise for as many years as he wants.
Coach, we were told that you helped Diallo through a tough time in the 2018 season. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think our whole staff, was supportive. From Coach Cal to Coach Payne to Coach Barbie. There was some times there where Hami hit a little bit of a skid and shots weren't falling, and probably much like in the NBA. The fans at Kentucky can get after guys on social media or on radio shows or podcasts. You've got a very passionate fan base that knows basketball, but also has a little bit of unrealistic expectations of these 18-year-olds, that they're more machines than people. And the thing about Hami during that period, he never stopped. You would never see his head go down. You would never see him kind of pout or make excuses. And then at the end of the year, he was a force, and then helped us get to the Sweet 16 with a major game against Buffalo in the round of 32 out in Boise, Idaho. And, he's a guy that once again, you just can tell about the type of character that he has and the type of person that he is, that he's going to just keep fighting. He's going to be a great guy in the locker room. He's going to be a fantastic person in the community there. And like I said, I mean, we knew that, and it's hard to kind of point blank say that one of us did anything more than the other, just as our staff knew that we were going to need Hami at the end of the season.
Did he ask you for help when he was preparing for the dunk contest?
No. I know the only thing that probably somebody from here helped Hami with was the shoes he wore. I know that the guy, Billy Hobbs here in Lexington was the guy that painted those shoes for him, and I would think that might be the only inspiration that he had from Lexington on the dunk contest.
Well, if he accomplishes nothing else in his career, which I'm sure he will accomplish more in his career, but he's at least got a piece of NBA immortality with being a dunk contest champion.
I think he's got more ahead of him. And I think, and I believe that, he's, like I said, when you have such a burning desire to be special, and when you have the work ethic that Hami has, and really the belief that he can do so much more, he's going to be great. He's going to be great for you all, and I know that he's going to, come back from this little break and really hit the ground running.
Coach, what's it like to work under Coach Cal? What makes him such a great basketball coach?
Well, I think, so much of what Cal does for our players, he does for us as a staff, and he's always looking to push the envelope. He's always looking to challenge, and he's always kind of making you uncomfortable. And that's the biggest thing, I think, for all of us here at Kentucky, when you're working for somebody that ultimately wants you to be better and knows that for us to be better, each individual has to be better. And that's something, even as a coach, he's a guy that cares so much about his staff, cares so much about our players. He's always finding ways to kind of push. And ultimately, you've got to be, comfortable being uncomfortable, here. And that's the players, that's the staff. And but that it's all love, and that it's he's got your best interest, at the forefront of his mind. And that's what makes him so special, is that he can take, 10, 11, 12 players and a group of kind of men on his staff and make sure that everyone is getting better every single day and is still being challenged.
So you and Coach Cal bring in, 5 or 6 top 100 recruits every year, but there are only so many shots and so many minutes to go around. How do you get stars to buy in to becoming role players? How do you turn studs into a team?
Well, I think so much of it is in recruiting. That you're identifying guys that truly want to be professional, and you have to explain that to them. This is what the NBA is looking for. They're looking for kind of what you said earlier, efficiency. There's not going to be many guys go from NCAA Division I into the NBA and be a volume shooter in year one. So you've got to learn to play with great players. You've got to learn to coexist. You've got to learn how to make the extra pass. You've got to know how to get a hockey assist or create for somebody else. And then still be able to go down and guard and compete and rebound. I mean, I was listening to somebody talk the other day. I mean, you guys would know. I mean, what is there? Is there 450 players in the NBA roughly? And,
yeah, that's right.
Of the 450, you've got, I guess, somewhere around 100 that are the best players. You've got now 350 guys that are basically role players. And for us, it's teaching young people how to play, how to compete, how to work, how to kind of wrap their mind around building habits and building their own confidence to work like a professional. Because if you truly want to do this, for a living, you've got to do it every day. That's what work is. You just can't do it when you feel good. And if you only play well, if you only feel like playing well when you feel good, especially when you're in an 82-game season, your career is not going to be for long in that league.
Right. I heard it said one time, I think by a coach, that everyone is a role player, and it's up to you to star in your role. Like if you're if you're a good shooter and a good shot maker, it's your role to take a lot of shots. You know, like you can't opt out of that.
No, and that's right. And I think you've got those guys, I mean, that are in the NBA like that, but you're talking about 2 or 3 on a team, and now you've got 10 guys, basically 9 guys that are, in so many young people's eyes, insignificant. But really, those guys are extremely significant, and they're making a pretty doggone good amount of money to be a role player. And, teams are looking for great players. They're looking for, the right guys to build a team that can compete for a championship. And I think here we work to instill that in our guys, as this is a team game. You're not going to get 25 shots when you come to Kentucky, but you might get 25 in a game. If you get it going, Cal's going to go to you. But there's no guarantee here that someone's going to get 25 shots a game because everybody else has got to eat too.
I got one last question for you, Coach, and we can scrub this one if you don't want to answer it. But as a Hogs fan, I got to know, did Coach Cal get himself thrown out when you guys were playing in Fayetteville this year?
Did he get thrown? Well, of course he got thrown out. I know you know the answer to that question.
Did he do it intentionally?
I don't think so. I think he went up to ask very politely, the officials, kind of what was their view of that play, and I think very politely they asked him to leave. And sometimes, sometimes there's a better view from a different part of the arena, and I think Coach just decided to maybe see what the coach's locker room and the back of Bud Walton looked like a little bit earlier that evening.
Yeah. Well, it ended up being a big win for you guys. All right. Well, that's the last stop on the bus today. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
You can follow Coach on Twitter at UKCoachJustus, and you can find us on all the major podcast apps. Plus, we're on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at Thunder_Bus_pod. Until next time, thanks for riding the bus this week, and Thunder up!